MP Claudius Moncamper says some mistakes were made with the Criminal Procedure Code. CEO of the PJIA says he is happy that all the criteria has been met. But first up, International Women's Day celebrated under the theme, I Am Generation Equality, Realizing Women's Rights. Those are the headlines from Monday, March the 9th, 2020. This is SXM Daily News. I'm Valerie Van Putten. Now for the details. The Windward Islands Teachers Union International Women's Day celebration was held on Saturday last, March 7, 2020, at the Infinity Restaurant under the theme, I Am Generation Equality, Realizing Women's Rights. Mrs. Claire Elshot, Y2's president and who is also forms part of the Status of Women's Committee, bid the crowd a warm welcome and wanted to honor women as it was a special celebration because it marked 25 years that women of this community of St. Martin went to Beijing to work on the declaration and platform for action. The keynote speaker at the event, Reginald Bakari Arendel, who is the General Secretary of the WICSU, addressed the 45 teachers in attendance. Firstly, he gave a disclaimer that he has a very superficial understanding of women's issues. But as a student of history, he said, he understands and recognizes the important role women have played in our society.
I want to give a disclaimer. I do not have a background in sociology. I am not familiar with the leading thinkers and theories of gender equality. I have a very superficial understanding of women's issues, and I can go down the line. So I guess by now some of you wondering what makes me qualified to even have this discussion, correct? So yeah, it's no problem. Fact of the matter is this. As a student of history and an active member of the trade union movement, we understand and recognize the important role women have played, continue to play, and will play in the future where it pertains to the development of this nation and the region. Bear in mind, as General Secretary of the WICSU PSC Union, whose membership comprises the majority of women, you can understand that I am confronted with the stories, challenges, realities of many of our female members on a day-to-day basis. So in a sense, I'm not General Secretary. At times I find myself as therapist, counselor, psychologist, sounding board, whatever you want to call it. You understand? Because we recognize the need for such services also. Because in these times, we would be doing ourselves a disservice by limiting ourselves specifically to one role, mindful and aware of the other injustices occurring in our community. That makes sense? Yes. Thank you. Another important thing, because I said I am a student of history, and history informs us that since times immemorial, we as a people had no problem. We had no problem whatsoever to elevate or to keep the woman on the highest pedestal. We had no problem with that. It is nothing ironic or new or even fascinating when you consider that in Africa, for example, we saw goddesses, we saw queens, we saw women who owned land, we saw women whose rights superseded that of men, everything go down the line. We've seen women in their capacity as nation builders. We've seen them in their capacity as scientists and astrologers. We've seen them as the healers. We've seen them in different capacities. As a matter of fact, you will know that the lunar calendar is linked or synchronized to the cycles of a woman. Bear this in mind. That shows the deep understanding that we've had. Our temples were structured after women also. So we have to understand that something happened and disrupted that along the way. Because it didn't start now. It ain't start now. Okay? There has been a constant and ongoing and a vicious attack to relegate the rights, the humanity of women in various chapters of history. Okay? Are you with me so far? Yes. Sure. Okay, I have to build up. I have to build up. We as self-respecting men, we take issue with the manner in which we have pastors or imams would use religion, would use traditions to exploit and abuse and rob the best years of women. Not too long ago, you will recall that in Somalia, a young girl met her demise after being raped by 4 men. One of the men, 3 men were executed, and rightfully so. 3 men were executed. One was allowed to escape death row by giving the family 75 camels. 75 camels. Okay? So you're explaining to us, because of your tradition, because of your behavioral practices, that the value of my daughter, the value of my aunt, the value of my cousin amounts to 75 camels.
And we will have more of Mr. Arundel's speech in tomorrow's edition of SXM Daily News. In other news at this time, the urgent plenary public session of Parliament that was to be held on Friday, March the 6th, 2020, about the financial situation of the airport, the funding for the reconstruction of the airport, and the resignation of the airport's CFO was postponed until further notice by President of Parliament Rolando Bryson. The agenda points were to include financial situation of the airport and the funding for the reconstruction and the resignation of the airport's CFO. This meeting was requested by MP C.T. Emmanuel, MP C.A. Buncamper, and MP A.E. Arundel. And in some good news, the St. Martin Trust Fund Steering Committee has given the final go-ahead to start the reconstruction of the Princess Juliana International Airport on St. Martin. $72 million from the trust fund, financed by the Netherlands, has been allocated for the reconstruction. The European Investment Bank is also contributing with a loan of US $50 million. I am very pleased that we were able to approve the governing conditions for the airport. Now the reconstruction of the airport can start, and we can ensure that the resources are spent responsibly and sustainably, said Frans Wiekers, the representative from the Netherlands of the Trust Fund Steering Committee. The plans for the reconstruction are ready, and the necessary financing agreements were signed at the end of 2019. A number of conditions aimed to strengthen the management of the airport were attached to this plan. This includes actions to improve the corporate governance of the airport and put focus on building back better, so that it is guaranteed that the resources for the repair of the terminal are used transparently and effectively. Parallel to the financing process that started in 2018, preparations for the reconstruction of the airport terminal had begun. As a result, remediation works at the airport can commence. After tendering, it is expected that the extensive repairs will start by the end of the third quarter of this year. The full reconstruction of the airport will be executed in phases with a total time span of 18 to 22 months. That issue was discussed with the Chief Executive Officer at the Princess Juliana International Airport, Brian Mingo.
You know, one of the requirements of the World Bank was that we had to make sure that we satisfy all of the criteria set by the sponsor, and the sponsor in this case was the Netherlands. And the Netherlands and St. Martin government have signed a protocol to ensure that corporate governance is applied at the airport. So one of a few of the items, the line items, is appointment of a CFO, appointment of board members, the task force, screening of management, the profiles. Those are some of the action points that were done. It took us a while to get to that point. We finally got that point, and they approved the progress made.
Mm-hmm.
So what this does is it actually frees it makes the funds available from the World Bank. Having these funds available will also release the insurance proceeds and also will contribute towards EIP for a total amount of close to $170 million.
This is undoubtedly very good news for the airport development. Hasn't been decided as to exactly when the actual reconstruction work project starts?
Well, a project this size, this is not a small project. We have, there's a long planning phase in which we have acquired services of architect, a company, Corner, and they are, together with my project team, the airport's project team, is putting together the plans and, of course, the tender document, the bidding document. And this, together with the NRPB, which is National Recovery Bureau, Planning Bureau, will go out there and, execute the project. Before all of this happens, there is a phase of remediation where we clean the airport, because remember we had it soaked down with rain and mold, so that needs to be completely taken out of the building. That's going to happen in the next few weeks. The money is now made available, so we can continue with that. And of course, the tender documents and everything will be put to market, and I think we can start the bidding process in May. Eventually construction will start later quarter of this year. So we can at least see some construction happening later part of this year.
2 youngsters were arrested last week following the sexting of explicit material whereby the subject was a teenage minor. Sexting is the sending or forwarding of sexually explicit photographs or videos of the sender or someone known to the sender via cell phone. It has become a common practice among young people. On Wednesday, March the 4th, 2020, the common practice landed 2 youngsters behind bars. A male with initials ACR, 20 years, and a female with initials FV, 17 years, were arrested for the production and distribution of what can be classified under the law as child pornography. Because transferring and viewing sexually explicit material when the subject is a minor can be considered child pornography, there can be serious legal consequences. The St. Martin Police Force would like to urge all parents to closely monitor your children and what they share via the various social media outlets, because they too can be held accountable. And still to come, Minister of Justice sits in continuation of plenary session. You'll have the details for that story and more when SXM Daily News returns.
GEBE has been faithfully serving the communities of St. Martin, powering your home and our economy. Come rain or shine, our qualified team of professionals are working hard 24 hours a day to provide you and your family with safe, reliable electricity and water. We use the latest technologies and test our products daily to maintain the highest international standards. Our friendly staff is always there to assist you, whether in person, over the phone, or online. We are committed to constantly improving our products and services, making them more efficient, effective, and environmentally friendly to serve you better today and our next generation of clients tomorrow. GEBE, powering a brighter future.
Our friend Megawati is here with tips to save you energy. 1. Turn your airco temperature up. 2. Use a ceiling fan instead. 3. Buy energy-saving products. Save some green with NVGEBE.
In the continuation plenary public session of Parliament about National Ordinance establishing a new Code of Criminal Procedure, the House of Parliament sat in the plenary public session last week, Friday, March the 6th, 2020. The meeting was a continuation of the adjourned meeting of October 11, 2019. It was held at the General Assembly Chamber of House of Parliament, which is located at the Wilhelmina Straat No. 1 in Phillipsburg. The Minister of Justice, Mr. Egbo Doran, was present.
Mr. Chairman, almost 9 months ago, the government of St. Martin sent a draft national ordinance establishing the new Penal Procedure Code to Parliament. The draft is a joint production of Aruba, Curacao, and St. Martin. It will replace the existing Penal Procedure Code, which the Caribbean countries and the Best Islands adopted from the former Netherlands Antilles. The government has sent the draft faster than Curacao and Aruba to the Parliament because the government was working on the premise that if by November 2019 St. Martin had not enacted its legislation in line with the FATF recommendations, then the country would have been incorporated in the CFATF, FATF public statement, and we all know how that turned out. I would also like to note, Mr. Chairman, that the former government of St. Martin made a promise to the CFATF that they will incorporate these recommendations in our Penal Procedure Code. I believe it's very important to know how we got here, where we are and how we got here. From June 2019 to September, the Parliament, in its meeting of the Central Committee, had exchanged several views within the government on the draft, during which the period of the government answered many critical questions to the Parliament. Members of Parliament also provided them with we also provided the members of Parliament with requested documentation. In September 2019, Parliament considered the draft to be adequately prepared to be discussed in a public meeting, which the first meeting took place on November 14, 2019. Due to the intermediate changes in government and Parliament, again answered questions during the new season with the Parliament Central Committee pertaining to the draft Penal Procedure Code in relation to the FATF recommendations and the CFATF public statement that was issued to St. Martin. The questions have been elaborately answered, both orally and in writing, also substantiated with other documentations. We are in fact back now to November 14, 2019 in handling the draft Penal Procedure Code. I would also like to mention, Mr. Chairman, that members of Parliament have several rights, of which the right of amendment is included in such, if there is need be for something like that. It is therefore government hope that the new Penal Procedure Code will be passed as soon as possible by this House of Parliament.
And in other news, Member of Parliament, Mr. Claudius Boncamper, speaking at his first public meeting on the topic of the new Criminal Procedure Code, the MP said that this is the first time he is addressing the new Criminal Procedure Code. When he was reviewing the history for the meeting, he titled it The Storyline of St. Martin. He has also come to realize that some mistakes were made and some hastily decisions were made that could cripple St. Martin, and it has crippled us. He elaborated.
Mr. Chairman, this is the first time that I'm addressing in a public meeting this very specific topic of the new Criminal Procedure Code. Mr. Chairman, when I reviewed the documents and I started reviewing the history, I titled my discourse this morning, The Storyline of St. Martin. As is often the case in every country, one goes through a range and a stage of growing up, no matter how well prepared we are. Normally, this can range from various aspects, Mr. Chairman, such as economy, infrastructure, education, constitutional, and yes, even justice. We have come to realize that we made some unfortunate, hastily decisions back when becoming status of an autonomous country within the kingdom on 10-10-10, which until this day has us unstable in moving forward. When becoming an autonomous country, one cannot already have two strikes against them, showing the world that if we want to become autonomous, we must have the following guidelines, controls in place, and we will allow outsiders to decide for us. You might ask, what do I mean with such? And I will just show you a few things. The CFT, Mr. Chairman, has over the years crippled St. Martin, being not able to borrow and fix its infrastructure, like the police station and prison, to name two good examples, that today is hunting us. We have lost 2 cases with the police cells at the police station and the human rights courts in Europe. There are many more buildings that need fixing, and we just simply don't have the money for such. Then, Mr. Chairman, came the Integrity Chamber. In its first setup, basically, the whole law was written by outsiders, which seemingly didn't, because we seemingly didn't have the capacity to do so. And I want to stress on these words, seemingly, because I believe we do have capacity. We just don't want to use them. Thank God to the Ombudsman. We were freed from a strangling grip that was placed on this country with the former proposed Integrity Chamber. The Constitutional Court squashed the initial Integrity Chamber because they were above the law. They were not held to the law. You see, Mr. Chairman, who made that law? The Dutch did. And very specifically where I want to go with this. The body parliament made a decision as a condition to accept the Integrity Chamber then, because a gun was put to their head that an instruction would come down on the country. And every time we hear the word instruction, we start to scramble and we make wrong decisions. Mr. Chairman, there are many underlying agreements that have been signed over the years in the justice field, which they use today to arrest people left, right, and center. They use methodologies of intimidation, entrapment, forgery, illegal hacking, the new word on the block, crown witnesses. And yes, even with using the BOP law that was approved, they are misusing it in certain instances in this country. Mr. Chairman, these are harsh statements I'm making. But if I'm wrong, I will gladly stand corrected by the competent authorities. And that is not the Justice Minister right now, because he doesn't know what the boys and girls do that don't fall under the Chief of Police in St. Martin. I'm sending a straight message today. Mr. Chairman, sometimes I feel we live in a police state and not in a democratic country. And that is not a good feeling to have, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, if we ever want to truly govern freely, I believe we are going to have to become independent. Don't take those words lightly, because I surely don't. I don't believe we are ready for it, because we don't have the capacity we need. But Mr. Chairman, I wasn't born an independista, but I wasn't left a choice but to become an independista these days. Mr. Chairman, many people will say the reason Bancampa is up here ripping asunder the authorities is because he himself has been investigated in the past, convicted in the past, and investigated presently again. Mr. Chairman, this law is bigger than Bancampa. This law is about the country St. Martin, the people of St. Martin. In my first run-in with the RST, TBO, my case was called the Bumo case, the Bancampa Molanas. Those days they had to take down my wife, the politician. Eventually, from 18 months jail sentence, it ended up in 240 hours community service in a booth. Something tells you that something was dead wrong from the start of the case. I can sit down here and rehash a lot of things, but I'll just say one thing. When the prosecutor's office behaves in such a way that they are taking off the case completely and Curacao is brought in, you should ask yourself the question, what's really wrong there? The new prosecutor, kudos to her. She has been cleaning up a mess that she met there, and they don't like her for such. But God bless her, because at least she's doing a decent job.
And in news out of the Netherlands at this time, Dutch coronavirus total rises to 128. One patient has died. The number of confirmed cases of coronavirus in the Netherlands rose from 46 to 128 on Friday, 8 days after the disease was first diagnosed. Of the 128 patients, 101 were either infected abroad or are contacts of confirmed patients. The Public Health Institute, RIVM, said that northern Italy, where many Dutch people go to ski during the winter half-term holidays, has been a primary source so far. 5 of the new patients have been hospitalized and the rest were treated at home. Earlier on Friday, the RIVM said that one patient, an 86-year-old man, had died. The man was being treated in quarantine at the Ikasia Ziekenhuis in Rotterdam after his diagnosis was confirmed last week. Officials do not yet know how he contracted the virus. The RIVM says anyone who has been in high-risk area within the last 14 days and who develops breathing problems or a cough should stay home and alert their family doctor. And now turning to our weather forecast for March the 9th, 2020. A tightening pressure gradient will produce above normal winds across the region. Meanwhile, moisture associated with the frontal boundary just north of the local area will generate isolated showers at times during the forecast period. Deteriorating seas with waves peaking near 10 feet in some areas are due to a combination of northerly swells and breezy conditions. As such, high surf and small craft advisories are now in effect. Small craft operators and sea bathers are advised to exercise caution. Now, let's turn to your 3-day forecast. And still to come, WICSU's PSU highlights areas of concern at plenary session on pension reform. We'll have the details of that story and more when SXM Daily News returns.
Make use of WIB mobile banking with easy access and direct usage of face recognition, PIN code, or fingerprint. Download WIB mobile banking app and make your transaction from anywhere at any time. For more information, visit wib-bank.net/quick-login.
And still with more labor news. The meeting that was held by the WICSU PSU, the private sector union, on Thursday last, March the 5th, was to highlight a number of areas that the WICSU was concerned about. The purpose was to highlight the concerns, highlight the observations, and some of the gaps that the union perceived that are currently present in the draft law on pension reform.
The main objective of the meeting was to highlight the concerns, highlight the observations, highlight some of the gaps that we perceive that are currently present in the draft law on pension reforms. We were able to host this discussion between 3 and 5 to enable workers, to enable civil servants to come out, to listen, to hear, to ask questions and share their observations. As you know, many workers, because of different family obligations, are oftentimes unable to attend meetings after work. So we sought a different approach with the hope of accommodating them. We are happy to report that a number of persons were a bit comforted by the position and the stance of their union, their representative, the WICSU PSU union, and of course the YCLU in general. It's an inter-union approach. And what we have pointed out, besides identifying the shortcomings of the draft law, but we have also placed it within a context of the current realities that many civil servants are faced with. For example, many civil servants find themselves in the wrong salary scale. We have not seen indexation of salaries for a number of years. Many civil servants don't enjoy receiving job-specific training in order to apply for higher paid functions. And we can go down the line. But we brought that into the discussion to state in no uncertain terms that one's current level of wages will directly and is correlated to one's pension outcome. So unless significant and let's call it drastic changes, drastic improvements happens within the public sector, it means that the pension benefit in the future will be less than favorable.
I'm Valerie Van Putten. Just a reminder that this and other programs are available online. Simply log on to stmartinmedia.com for viewing. And on behalf of SXM Daily News team, We thank you for watching and plan on meeting you back here again tomorrow.